Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where the Amiga got some great arcade ports. But one area it didn't do quite so well was with the one-on-one beat-em-up. So let's check out the Amiga's answer to Street Fighter 2. The Amiga got its own port of Street Fighter 2, a few in fact, that won't go down in history as the best releases of the game, held back by single button joysticks, and it was rarely given the resources needed to make a good port. Not when stacked up against the consoles, that is. But the Amiga devs were never one to shy away from a bandwagon, so let's look at some one-on-one beat-em-ups that were Amiga first or exclusives. And in no real order this time, let's start with Body Blows. Or to be more correct, Ultimate Body Blows, which took Body Blows and Body Blows Galactic and combined them together into a single CD-only game. This was released in 1994 and was made by Team 17, and with a whopping 22 characters, it's got quite the roster. The backgrounds are also quite detailed, even if the characters themselves don't have a huge number of colours. The game itself, well, it suffers from a similar problem to many other Street Fighter 2 clones. There's no real difficulty curve. The game will punish you from the start, and it will take you a while to get the hang of things as well, as the moveset, well, isn't all that advanced. Each fighter gets one special move, which is activated by holding down the fire button, and then the other attacks are done by pressing fire and a direction at the same time. Thankfully, while the controls aren't that inventive, the characters are far more creative. Yeah, you've got the basic Ryu, Ken lookalikes, but did Street Fighter have a dinosaur? A robot? Or even a fire elemental? I think not. You can see why this franchise got 3 games, as it's fast and moves quite nicely, but it's possibly a little too fast. With everyone moving around so quickly, it rarely feels like you're planning out any moves. I'm no expert at beat-em-ups, in fact I'd say I'm average at best, and I'm sure that will come across in the gameplay footage, but I have been playing them for quite some time, and with that in mind I find this to be an okay competitive brawler. Not amazing, but also not the worst. Next up is Capital Punishment. Possibly the newest game, as it was released in 1996 and was developed by Clickboom and was made just for the AGA machines, with some impressive production values. The game doesn't really have much in the way of playable characters, with just 4 to select from at the start, and only 3 that I can really show off, as, well, yeah, and this is before we get to see her celebration move. I think we'll skip her. The first level is a sewer. Civi fans, you know what to do. And just look at that shadow on the floor. That is very fancy. But don't ogle it too long or, well, we're already dead. I feel slightly embarrassed to say, but this is on the training difficulty setting. The moves are mostly simple to pull off, with it being another direction and fire affair. But there are some extra moves that can be pulled off by hitting the fire button 3 times and then a direction. It's an odd system, but it seems to work for the game. There is also this fancy fatigue and stamina system in place that gets affected differently depending on where you get hit. And I feel this might be almost completely pointless when the fights can be over in just 10 seconds. The matches also seem to be the best of 1, no rounds or even continues. So you then have to go all the way through the main menu again, which I swear takes longer than some of the matches that I've had, before you can get back into a fight. And that thing there, he will jump the microsecond the fight starts. He is not hanging around. And reading some of the comments from the developers after the game was released, it seems that they kept increasing the difficulty as one of the leads on the project always felt it was too easy. And I'm sure I say this from everyone who's played this game. Thank you, you did a great job. It also seems there was a PC version in development, and was pretty much finished but was never released due to some fallout between the devs and the company. But that's way beyond the scope of this video, so maybe we'll get into it another time. As you might have guessed from my tone, I'm not a huge fan of this game. It looks absolutely amazing. I just wish the gameplay was half as fun. And from out of the darkness comes Shadow Fighter. This was developed by Nap's team and published by Gremlin in 1995. Hidden away behind this relatively basic looking menu is what is roundly classed as one of the best beat-em-ups on the Amiga. It came with a large cast of characters, and you can even unlock a few extras with some cheats. And it's also got these detailed stages that don't skimp out on the animations either. And while we'll spend most of the time with the AGA version, the original Amiga also got a pretty decent edition as well that looks really nice. The controls will be very familiar to anyone that's played Street Fighter 2 before. It's all combination of rotating the joystick and hitting the fire button. But as it's a single button game, there aren't any different strengths, speeds, or selecting between kicks or punches. But the characters themselves do have quite the range of moves to try and make up for that. Like Electra, who has a shock style move similar to Blanca, but can also throw a small projectile. Or Slam Dunk, who has a large number of moves, many based on his basketball. And if this range of abilities seems a little daunting, then the game also included a practice mode, with possibly one of the best characters ever created, Popaz. This dummy hides an arsenal inside that innocent looking body. But as we've seen, the game moves nice and smooth and at a decent speed, but also not too fast like some of the other games. This is a team that really understood how Street Fighter 2 worked, and it's full of nice little touches, like that blood that covers the ground when the fight's taking place, or this weird opponent who's mostly transparent. In a way, this game being so solid makes it really hard to talk about, as this looks like something that could have been at home on either of the consoles at the time. Simply put, it's the best one-on-one fighter that we'll be looking at today. And from that amazing high we're going to be falling falling so very far. Strap on a parachute as we're going to be dropping down onto the dangerous streets. Developed by Mania, with Flare handling the publishing, it was released in 1994. And incredibly, this ended up as a pack-in title for the CD32. Oh, you wonderful beast, you deserved so much better than this. As this is the type of game where all the men have weird quirks and all the women wear very little. Though at least it covers up everything, unlike Capital Punishment. The controls feel almost random with how it decides what you're going to be doing, so I couldn't even tell you how any of the moves are meant to be pulled off, because I don't know. The animations are terrible, as well as the general movement. Nothing is smooth or good in this game. The characters, while semi-inventive, their designs are so ugly and badly done. Even the descriptions are stupid. Why have we got a lorry driver fighting a top model or a gym teacher? The closest we get to something that's a nice touch is the portraits on the HUD that change with the fight. Or that it's slightly creative with its moves, as we can see when the AI manages to pull them off. Though changing into a slab of concrete to block, well, that's a bit of a weird choice. But then so is one of the moves that summons a mini-me. And just to make sure that everyone could get in on the suffering, they also released this for the original Amiga as well as the A1200. Oh, and to top it all off, there's no palette swaps when you and the AI select the same character. So when that's combined with the bad controls, you will lose track of who you're playing as. Neat. Simply put, avoid this like... well, I was going to say like the plague, but then, well, the last few years happened. Avoid it like a cat that's just been shown a bath. Let's now move on to something a little bit more unique and check out Mania. This was made by Terramark, of later Housemark fame, and was published by Renegade. This was released in the year of the beat-em-up 1994. And if the name didn't give it away, this is a game about fighting elves. But it has its own take on the formula that we've seen so far. First up is this map screen, where your goal is to try and get 6 wins in a direction across the board. The other is you have to pay for the character you want to select, with the stronger characters costing more, obviously. And boy, this is a good looking game. Just look at that background. The water that's flowing across, the fish that are jumping around. It's absolutely amazing. And this is running on the original Amiga chipset. There's no AGA power going on here. And what's even more surprising is this came on just 2 floppy disks. And considering some of the others came on 4 and could require 3 disc changes just to get into a single match, this is a great job. And as we can see, the money aspect also shows up in the matches, as coins will go flying across and you have to hit them if you want to collect them. The combat is a little bit simpler than some of the other games, with it being closer to body blows, as you have to use the button and a direction to fight, with the diagonals being used to aim low, medium or high, which is quite a nice touch. And you can punch as well as kick depending on if you're pushing towards or away from the characters. The jump is surprisingly floaty, as you get far more control over it than you have in any other beat 'em up that I've played. You can almost jump up and then come down when you want to. Each map is a single round, that if you win, you'll end up with money falling from the sky. And collecting this, as you might imagine, is very important, as if you don't have enough cash, then it's game over. So you might have to spend your money wisely when you select the character you want to play as. Each character does have a single special move that requires you to waggle the joystick to pull it off. But outside of that, it's mostly simple moves, even if some of the characters do have weapons like swords. The game looks really nice in motion, but it's another that's put more time and effort into the graphics rather than the gameplay. Even if it has come up with its own creative ideas, it is still let down by the controls. So it's a fun, if shallow game. So I'd say it's very similar to Body Blows in that respect. And for our final fighter, it's Full Contact. Developed by Team 7 and published by 17-Bit Software, who would later merge together to become Team 17, this was released in 1991, so a good few years before all the other games in this video. And it's possibly more famous for its intro than the actual game. Because, well, just look at this. How incredible does that animation look? Released in the same year as Street Fighter 2, it owes its looks and gameplay style more to games like International Karate than what would come later. So this is obviously the simplest of all the games that we've seen here. There's no character selection, and while there is a number of moves, it's not a huge range. And you also have one of the funniest jumps I've ever seen. The combat is also quite interesting, as you have to be very precise with your attacks, as you can miss a kick if you're too close and the foot goes past the other character. The health bar also doesn't change immediately, it will slowly drain after they've taken a big strike, normally when they're on the floor. But this might also be the only game in this list that has some between fight minigames. There's a classic punching bricks, and this very nice looking dodging game. It's definitely an old title, and it shows off what the one-on-one beat-em-ups were like before Street Fighter 2 changed everything, so it's really hard to compare it to all the games that came later. And as we like our cover discs on this channel, I figured it might be fun to check out two games that were only playable from a magazine cover. First up is Mortal Kumquat 3. aka Fruit Fighter 2, Turbo, GTI, XL, 4x4, and Knuckles. Wait, no, that's too far. Where once you get past these various menus, that do nothing by the way, we find ourselves selecting Fruit to fight as. And then you get in the game itself proper and... Yep, those are the sound effects that they went with. And yes, those are the moves. This is a game where the pulp really goes flying. And if it's not twigged yet, this is a comedy game that was on an Amiga action cover disc. And to be honest, this plays a bit better than Dangerous Streets. It could also give Rise of the Robots a run for its money. As you can imagine, there's not too much here. It is just a small, fun comedy game. But what it does well enough. The other game is one that was reviewed, but never fully released. But we did get a demo of it. X-Fighter. Now this game isn't as smooth as polished as some of the others that we've seen, but it's a valiant attempt at using Amos as the development environment. So it's more like a PD title that managed to get quite far in development. And it also had its own little twists, with the health meter being one of them. As some of the modes, there is just a single bar for both players, and it will move back and forth as the match goes on. It's almost like a seesaw, with the winner being the one that manages to get it all the way over to the other side. It's a really cool idea, and I'm not sure it's one I've seen anyone else do. But as a demo, it is quite limited with the number of characters. So, outside of the review, we can't really tell how good this game would have been. And with that, I think we've covered a good number of games. Did they get close to beating Street Fighter? Well, many were much better than the Amiga ports. And I think Shadow Fighter might come close to the arcade game, but most of them, I think they missed the mark slightly. But if there was one that I missed that you think I should check out, let me know down in the comments. I'd also like to hear which of these was your favourite. So until next time, I've been the Goldfish, that was Hadouken, and this was Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can let me know down in the comments, or you can use those buttons just below. You know the ones I mean. Or if you're not sure yet, then you can check out 2 other videos that I've done that are on the screen right now. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon.